I'll do a little introduction, and I'll kind of like softball pitch it to you two.
Lights, camera, action.
You want to speak up?
I said lights, camera, action.
All right. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Million Dollar Media. I'm your host Max Kellerhalls, and with me today I have.
I'm Joelle.
I am James.
All right, and today we're gonna do something different. I did not see this movie, and I don't know much about this franchise, but these two saw it, and today we're going to be talking about The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And yeah, I'm pretty much just going to ask them a series of questions and just like wanting to know what this movie really is about. So, can you explain to me what this movie is and what it's about?
Sure. So basically, this movie is based off of the recently released prequel to the Hunger Games trilogy. The original trilogy movies came out in 2012 through 2015, following a dystopia country called Panem, where there is a central capital that is rife with corruption and opulence, and 12 surrounding supporting districts, all in varying stages of privilege and oppression, right? And each one is like the source of a particular vital resource for the country to run. So our main character in the original trilogy is Katniss Everdeen, for those who are very unfamiliar. She's from District 12, which is like the mining district. So it provides coal to all of the different districts that really rely on it. And
Also played by Jennifer Lawrence.
Yes, we love Jennifer Lawrence in this house.
Yes, we
so
do.
Good. Overall, I really liked the casting for the original trilogy, but James, what were your thoughts? I don't know.
I completely agree. You said that the casting for the Ballad of Songbirds Snakes was a little bit better than the casting for Hunger Games. I think, in my opinion, they're on par. I mean, Jennifer Lawrence as Katniss Everdeen is just an amazing cast, and the same with Tom Blythe as President as
Coriolanus.
As Coriolanus in the prequel, I think was also an amazing choice. I personally haven't seen Tom Blythe in like anything else that I can think of, but reading the book and then watching the movie, he did an amazing job, like using his expressions and emotions to convey his thought process that you get to read in the book in a movie format. So most movies don't do as good of a job showing the inner dialogue of a main character, and I think this movie is one of the few movies that do that really well, and I think that's part of the success is due to Tom Blythe. Anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying I really liked the casting of both the original trilogy and the prequel, and I don't know if I could pick a winner, though Peter Dinklage in the prequel was excellent. So
okay, yeah, and we'll come back to him in a minute. The original trilogy is following Katniss Everdeen as she becomes like this rising star and symbol of a rebellion against the oppressive capital and the regime. Getting into that, I really think that it made a good case for an adaptation. This was one of the better book-to-film adaptations I've ever seen.
Really?
So, yeah. Yes.
So is that in a sense of like as an adaptation or as like strictly a movie sense? Because there's difference between like being faithful to the original source material and then doing your own thing and just trying to make it the best possible thing it can be. And what would you say this is more of? Is this just like more of a faithful adaptation or its own thing?
I think that you could make a case for both.
Okay.
I think that it is a very faithful adaptation, but I believe that the director did a good job at making it have the kind of emotional impact of his own style of producing these films. Going back again to the interview that I was reading earlier, it talked a lot about how he wanted to focus more on the impact of the violence rather than the violence itself. Something that we see in this movie is very brutal violence, but we see very little blood or gore. There's some very graphic kind of deaths in the book where we do see like descriptions of like gushing blood and like blood spatters across the wall and that kind of stuff. We don't see that in the films, which I thought was a very
Well,
interesting choice.
I mean,
Yeah.
I from what I've heard, these books are usually aimed more towards like a young adult audience, and most of the time that's like for like a PG-13 audience. And if you were to do a R-rated like any of this stuff, it you could go a little far with the violence. Like I will say certain PG-13 movies can get away with like some shocking moments of violence as but they can't really show blood, or if they show blood, it can't be red.
Mm-hmm.
There's stuff like that. So even though yes, it's really commendable that they found a way to do what you said and not like glorify
Mm-hmm.
the violence, but I also think it's because they had these parameters put on them where it's like, well, we can't really show kids killing each other. I remember in the original Hunger Games movie, one of my biggest problems was actually like how everything was filmed. I wasn't a big
Okay.
fan of like because in the first movie, the cornucopia sequence is like this big important sequence where it's like, okay, the Hunger Games are gonna start, and then when you get to it, it's very shaky cam. You don't know, you can't see anything going on, and it
And I
was
thought that
just,
that. Okay, sorry.
it's just
Continue.
it for me. It kind of bothered me because I was like, I would like to see what's going on because like I'm trying to keep track of who is all still alive, and ultimately like none of it like it was just I don't know. The action has never really like impressed me in the Hunger Games, but after seeing a little bits of the trailer, I'm like, okay, I think they're not doing shaky cam anymore. Since we're talking about the violence, I thought we might as well like talk about like possible filmmaking stuff because again, that's kind of
Mhm.
also what I'm interested in.
Yeah. Okay. So, as a personal comment on the shaky cam thing, I kind of appreciated it simply because it really got you more into the mindset of the actual characters because they have no idea what's going on.
That's
The
fair.
cornucopia sequence is such a moment of panic and just trying to stay alive. You can't even keep track of who else is alive because you are so focused on getting out of there yourself.
All right.
Katniss was like the one thing that she was very focused on in that moment was getting out of there, getting away. Maybe you'll see flashes of people like, okay, yes, they're alive. Oh, that person just stabbed someone. Okay, I see their kind of goal with the shaky cam thing, and I can kind of appreciate it, but I understand that it can be kind of frustrating for
Mm-hmm.
those who are looking at it from a purely I want to know and see what's going on everywhere. But yeah.
I guess a couple comments. One, I would tend to agree with that. I think you're talking about a what is she, 16 or 17? I mean, she's in her like mid to late teens, right?
Yeah.
And you put a teenager in that situation,
Yeah, she's 16.
they're gonna freeze, they're gonna run. It's trauma. They're not gonna be able to metabolize the actual violence that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think from a story perspective, I can appreciate that. But again, to your point, the books are graphic. The books do explain what's happening. They do explain how violent it is. And so to kind of take away from how violent it is does could you could argue takes away from the message that these movies are trying to get at.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one going back to an earlier point, I think there's a difference between how the original trilogy portrays violence and the prequel portrays violence. Because in the original trilogy, I think you could argue that there wasn't a lot of blood or a lot of killing due to keeping it PG-13. But there's a moment in the prequel where what's supposed to be an insanely bloody affair in the movie, you don't see any blood.
Mm.
There is no blood to the point where the character looks at his own hands and you would expect to see blood, but there's none.
Hmm.
And I think that's an interesting, different perspective. And I think that was a choice to show absolutely no blood in that moment. Whereas in the original trilogy, I think there is a strong argument that they're just trying to keep it in the PG-13 parameters.
That's how I always saw it, at least, because they would also show like who's the little girl that dies in the first movie?
Rue.
Rue. They made a big deal about like, oh my god, we killed the kid with a spear, and they showed that okay. I don't know. Maybe like there's ways you can do panic attack like shaky camness without like making the audience themselves sick from watching it. I just wanted to like talk about this because like it's something that I remember watching and hearing about when the first one came out, is that people were really enjoying the movie and then kind of took a backseat when the actual Hunger Games came on screen, because they were like, I can't see what's going on, and like it bothered them.
I think that's totally valid.
Yeah. So something interesting from like a kind of camera shot perspective on from what I saw. So this whole prequel is essentially a corruption arc. We see this destabilization of a worldview and a very pivotal point in this young man's life. And there are certain moments where it goes to a very, not quite distorted, but a very different sort of shooting of his perspective.
Would you call it almost rose-colored?
No, not rose-colored. I'm thinking of like the corruption of it. Like, you know that what you're seeing is not what's actually there. It's like the kind of effect where everything is rocking back and forth, like very woozy, I think would be the term that I would give to it if I had to give it like a kind of a feeling, like a gut reaction. And you just know that something's wrong. Like, this is a point where things are turning bad, and you can tell just from the way that they are shooting this.
Are you talking about like at the end of the movie?
Yes, I just don't want to get into spoilers too much.
No, that's fine.
It's a very interesting choice that they went with, and you just see little flashes of it at different points, and then you see more extended sequences with this kind of shooting.
Yeah.
There are some really beautiful shots in this film, I gotta say. Like, the shots of the cabin, it's in like the third movement of the movie. It's so good. Anyways, that's about my thoughts on some of the camera things from the looking strictly at the film.
James, do you have anything you want to say before we move on? Like camera, like filmmaking wise, I should say.
There were very few movies and TV shows that really wow me with camera angles and camera perspective. I think two examples I can think of off the top of my head that do an amazing job with camera is the Joker movie, like the new Joker.
Oh, all right.
It was like
2019.
Oh my gosh, 2021, 2019. Is that 2019? Oh man,
yeah, it was 2019.
Yeah, that one.
It was before the dark times.
Yeah. The other example I was going to give is the show Dark.
Oh,
have you seen that?
I have heard of it so much, and I want to watch it.
You would love it.
I want to watch it. I listened to the intro of the show.
The intro slaps.
Music, 10 out of 10. Acting, 10 out of 10. Camera work, 10 out of 10. Plot, 10 out of 10. I could go on about this show, but
I'll watch it.
I won't.
I'll watch it.
The point I was trying to make in all of that was I think the movie was shot very well.
Okay.
There are very few shows and movies that do an amazing job with camera. I think this movie did a very good job. But in my perspective, it was just solid camera work. Nothing.
Gotcha. Next question I kind of have is how are the performances? And I kind of want to talk. I don't know. Should we talk about like? I know there's this weird controversy around like Rachel Zegler at the moment.
Okay,
I don't know if you know about
I'm unfamiliar
this.
with that.
Do you want me to explain it? I'll try to explain
Please
it
do.
In like the most bullet point way possible. She is cast as the new Snow White for Disney.
Oh yeah.
So you know about this? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. So recently she's come out and like had this really weird, like backhanded attitude. I don't know. It's really snarky and sarcastic, but I don't know if it's really working for like, hey, let's get excited for the Snow White thing. Um, and I was just curious because like, I ever since then like people have like this weird perception of her. So I was kind of worried when hearing reviews about this movie if people were going to have like a bias towards that. So I kind of wanted to just address the quote unquote controversy right off the bat. That way we can either like acknowledge that I don't think there's a bias going on here, is there?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
So
Just had to
to
make
be completely honest,
uh-huh.
um, I completely forgot that she was chosen to be the Snow White for that film.
Me too.
And I had not actually seen her in anything before this film. So
Is she in?
I just came in completely blank slate on that point.
She's
Um,
in the remake of West Side Story.
yeah, I just haven't seen it yet.
Me neither.
I'm a big fan of like the classic West Side Story.
I have seen the new West Side Story. I haven't seen the old one. So I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Personally, kind of disassociate. Maybe I shouldn't. I don't know if I should or not. But I kind of tend to disassociate actors with their characters, and so I think when I'm giving my opinion on her and her performance on this movie, I'm strictly going to base it off of that and not weigh in on the Snow White controversy.
Okay, I just wanted to bring it up that way like anybody
Well, yeah, fair.
because I don't know what your guys' opinion on her performance is yet, so I just wanted to like address it right
Yeah.
off the bat. So I guess what I should say is like, how are the performances in the film, and who was your favorite performance?
So overall, I think that pretty much everybody did a stellar job. But for me, the showstopper was Viola Davis, hands down, as Dr. Volumina Gaul. So good. She has such a presence. I've seen her in How to Get Away with Murder. Excellent show, by the way. But she is such a powerful presence to have on a set and in a project, and brings like this whole aura. And in this character, she is so able to control how she's being perceived by everyone in the room. Whether she is being perceived as like this powerful but eccentric and kind of borderline narcissistic kind of focus on her work.
Can I ask who this character is? Because I have no idea who this character is or what she does and why she is so significant.
Absolutely. So she is basically the first Hunger Games master. She is the one who orchestrates all of the different challenges, who organizes the reapings, and like in the movies, like the original trilogy, you see all like the mutants.
Yeah.
And she is the one who pioneered those mutants. That is her, basically her life's work.
Okay.
That's something I would love to touch on in a little bit, because there's a scene that's missing from the movie that was in the book that I think is really important specifically because of that aspect.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Dr. Gaul is supposed to be this very ominous, borderline role model character for Coriolanus Snow, and we see so much of her in who he becomes and what the games become. And she is even kind of a prelude to the capital as we see it in the original trilogy. Very colorful, power-hungry, corrupt, is willing to do whatever it takes. She is just ruthless. Her punishments are just swift and cutthroat and absolutely brutal to watch. So, yeah.
100% agree. There's a couple people that I think did an amazing job, but I would put Viola Davis as Dr. Volumina Gaul as number 2, if not number 1. Like her performance was stellar.
Was there anyone else?
Let me think.
Sorry, every other
Yeah.
actor.
No, she was the only good one.
Just Viola Davis.
No. I
That's
think
fair.
like we were saying before, the casting was stellar on this movie. Um, Again, Tom Blythe just an amazing job portraying the inner dialogue that you can't hear in movies that you do understand when you're reading the book. So a good job.
Okay.
All of them stellar performance. I think the only other person I'd really like to point out is Josh Rivera as Sejanus. Oh my gosh, Sejanus Plinth. I think he really did a great job portraying that character in the book, because I think I had a hard time while reading the book kind of understanding who Sejanus is and his attitude and how he walks and talks and is on a daily basis. Because there are some times where he's very timid in the book and sometimes where he's very courageous in the book, and I had a hard time kind of meshing that into a very cohesive character. I think Josh Rivera's performance as Sejanus Plinth is going to be a little underappreciated. Not because it was the best performance, because again, I think I'd probably give that to Viola Davis or Tom Blythe, or even Rachel Zegler. I mean, she did an amazing job, but I think his portrayal of Sejanus is going to be a little underappreciated, just because he did a fantastic job taking the character from the book to the movie.
I did have a couple different things that I wanted to touch on that are kind of less spoilery. So, in the original trilogy, there is always this kind of like underlying dark irony to everything, like from whole Prim being chosen on her very first year, entering her name into the Reaping Ball, to her not even being saved by her sister in the end. It was just all like one big long tragedy. Like, we are watching a train wreck happen in front of us and there's nothing we can do about it, right? And we see a lot of that kind of same tragic inevitability happen in the falling apart of these characters' relationships over the course of the film. And I think that that is very interesting to watch.
This film?
Personally, yes, this film.
Okay.
Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Like many villain origin stories, we know how it ends. Just like many tragedies, like Romeo and Juliet opening up with, this is gonna end with them all dying.
Like Joker.
This one, no. Yeah, This one is gonna end with us hating who Coriolanus Snow becomes. And I think that the film did that really well. With villain origin stories, you really need to be careful not to make them sympathetic and turn them into like an anti-hero, because you know that you can't have people sympathizing with this character too much, or you run the risk of them not understanding the character at all if you do it poorly and completely alienating them as a believable character. And I think that this book and movie did a really good job of starting them at a very, not entirely relatable, obviously, but a very vulnerable, yes, is a very good word to use for this, a very vulnerable position, and building into, falling into, this.
Clever.
Thank you.
I don't get it. Okay.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
We'll
It's the
explain.
spoiler portion. I think that was something that Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes did very well, and it's why I really appreciate how it was written, both on the books and how they chose to portray it in the films. Yeah.
James, do you have anything before we move on?
That's
To at least spoilers? Or any like overall wrap-up thoughts on non-spoilers?
One, I completely agree. I think there's kind of a point in time at the end of the film where you realize, oh, okay, he is a villain. This is his villain origin story. Because again, a lot of the movie, he's vulnerable, and you kind of feel sorry for him, even though like he's doing kind of bad things, and you recognize that, and the movie makes you recognize that. But at the end, there's a point where you go, oh, okay, this is how he turns into the main bad guy of the original trilogy. But I think it's also interesting because you can still see a glimmer of hope in him, in that like you could look at him and go, okay, it's still possible for him to turn his life around. If he really figured it out and chose to, he could turn his life around. But the end of this movie kind of feels like the beginning of his downfall as a human, right?
Mhm.
And so like everything before this was kind of the coalescing of that point, and then that point is like from here on he can choose to be the good guy or the bad guy because of the power that he's going to later have. And then you see him 70 years later and you're like, okay,
Whoa,
he
what?
chose wrong.
Yeah.
It's that long?
Yeah, no. Yes, this movie is set 63 years before the original trilogy.
Holy shit, how old is he in the...
He is old. This is an old,
60
corrupt, evil man.
64.
Really? Does this... I don't know much about this at all. Like, I don't even know if this sets up... Does this movie set up a new trilogy of some sort? Or is this like, this was a one and done deal? I don't
This
know.
is a one and done deal.
Okay.
This is meant to be a standalone.
Yeah, bridges are burned.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
very much so.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that in the spoiler portion.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Are you ready to
Yeah.
talk about spoilers now?
I am. Are you?
100%.
Okay.
All right. I'm just going
Alrighty,
to sit
so-
back and listen.
Oh, wait, hold on. I'm sorry. I had one more thing to say. Bern Gorman, the actor Bern Gorman, also plays a professor in Pacific Rim, and I just want to shout out to the fact that Bern Gorman can play a clumsy
He's in
professor
this?
and also...
Yes, he
yeah.
is.
He plays a commander. He plays like the head of a peacemaker. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
He plays the head peacemaker in District 12.
Never would have. Huh, good for him.
Okay.
All right, now
So-
spoilers. Sorry.
Now, getting into spoilers, because we just talked about how we could see like the glimmer of hope, and maybe this could go, will he, won't he kind of fall.
Mhm.
I want to talk about two specific characters that are close to him from the very beginning. He lives with his grandmam and Tigris Snow. I love Tigris so much. We see this kind of difference between the very understanding and glimmer of humanity in Tigris versus this very desperate, prejudiced, jaded, cynical kind of viewpoint from Grandmam. She sees people from the districts as savages, below human. She makes a comment at one point. They're discussing Lucy Gray, to clarify.
That's Rachel
no, so-
Zegler?
Yes. Lucy
Okay.
Gray is the main female lead. We'll get to her in a second. But Snow is talking about her and like how she's got to figure out a way to make... he needs to figure out a way to make her win the Hunger Games. And Tigris is like just kind of present, trying to be there for him. And his grandmam is chiming in and saying like, she's not even human, they're savages, there's no hope for her. And Tigris makes the comment, she's just a girl. And Grandmam responds with, that one hasn't been a girl for a long time. It's a very dehumanizing viewpoint to take to someone who is under 18. Like, this is an actual child being forced to do these things. And it's just so sad to see these warring viewpoints put in such close proximity. And it really makes me wonder about how Tigris came to be such an understanding and very soft kind of individual, but still so resilient. And by the end of the movie, I feel like Tigris is the real only victim left at the end.
I think what's really important is seeing her humanity since she was a child. At the very
Yes.
beginning of the movie, there's a moment you get to see the destruction of the war and how awful it is. And there's a dog about to, hurt them. And then she saves both her and Coriolanus, and it's a great scene. And they hide behind this pillar. It's her and Coriolanus when they're like 6 or something, 6 or 7. And this guy walks out into the middle of this courtyard and starts chopping up this dead dude. And Coriolanus asks Tigris, why is he doing that? And Tigris, doesn't respond like he's mean, he's evil, he's doing this, because he enjoys it. She responds, he's hungry. It's very human understanding of what's happening around her. And so I think, to your point, she does an amazing job of being able to see the humanity and the vulnerability in people, and the way that people
At their core are just people.
trying to do their best.
Yeah.
And so you could see it in her since she was a child.
Mm-hmm. And I really love that about her. And throughout the film, we just see Tigris continue to love Coriolanus because they're cousins, they're family. They have grown up together, they live together, they lived through the war and the destruction. These three members of the Snow family are all that's left of them.
Oh.
His mom died in childbirth for a younger sister. His dad died because he was killed by like rebels, is the story we're told, but we don't actually know the whole story on that. Either way, that kind of ambiguity leads itself to like the whole narrative of the Hunger Games and the Capitol and controlling the narrative. What are you telling people? How will this be seen? And I think that kind of leads us into another real turning point for a couple characters, Sejanus and Coriolanus in the arena. But okay, well, quick pause.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
yeah, break this down real fast. The movie is split into 3 parts,
All
right? So, first part, we see Snow has gone through high school and has worked hard to get good grades, so he is now one of the top 24 people in line for this scholarship. And it opens with this big ceremony to kind of announce, well, supposed to announce who won. It turns out that's not how it goes. He doesn't get the scholarship that he needs to pay the rent. Like, he and his family are about to be evicted. That's how it opens, with him in this very desperate position to get this money. And he thinks that he's entitled to it because he's worked so hard and he is here and he's doing everything he's supposed to. And then he's thrown one more curveball because those top 24 people are assigned as the very first mentors assigned to the tributes from the districts. This is like first of many traditions that we'll see pop up in the prequel. It starts with them. And he is assigned to District 12's girl, Lucy Gray Baird, which is also the first connection we see to later Katniss in the original trilogy.
Question.
Yes.
Do you find that connection like, oh, both like women in these are from both
District
characters are
12?
from District 12, and they just so happen to be like very important figures in Snow's life? Like, do you think that's a bit like contrived of like, oh, District 12, District 12?
So, okay. Part of me is like, yes, I can see how that could be taken as very contrived. I personally took it very much more towards the part of the tragedy and like kind of the haunting of Snow later on. Like, his first downfall was Lucy Gray, and his second was Katniss. Like a beginning and an end, bookends. And I liked it personally, but I'm one of those people that's like, nice little connections.
Poetry, rhymes.
Here's the thing. This movie set up so many connections, right? Coriolanus Snow sends in an essay to Dr. Volumnia Gaul, proposing a lot of different additions to the Hunger Games. And so you get to see where the idea of betting on victors comes from. You get to see the idea of sending gifts to victors. You get to see where that comes from. There's so many different things. The idea that the arena changes each year is introduced in this book/movie. There are so many things you get to see happen that it almost feels like Susan Collins was just kind of shoving in as many Easter eggs as she possibly could. And so I think that the specific connection of Lucy Gray Baird to Coriolanus wouldn't bother me. If her being from District 12 wouldn't bother me if there weren't so many other Easter eggs shoved in there for you to enjoy. But you have the mutants from Dr. Gaul. You see where they come from. You have, all of these different aspects that you're like, oh, that's a really cool reference. Oh, that's a really cool reference. And you're like, well, okay, did anything happen any other year in the Hunger Game? Like, this is the only year that things are being introduced, it feels like. And so I think that would be my only critical point of view on the connection of 12 in the prequel as well in the trilogy.
Okay.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Okay, so slight correction on one of the points that you said, but the rest, fine. The idea of changing the arena every year did not come from this. The only reason it kind of came from this was because in the first part, rebels bombed the arena, and thus it changed like the landscape of it. It's originally set in like this big stadium, and there's really no place to hide, no place to run. It really would just be like a killing field. It would be like a coliseum.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like, from what I know about the Hunger Games, is that it becomes this very, like, kind of like this Olympic event where they want to make it like this long, drawn out thing. And that's kind of
Correct.
where he comes in, Snow, at the very least. Is that what, am I getting that right?
What? Yes.
Yes.
So the idea is basically they were all chosen as mentors,
Mm-hmm.
and this is their assignment,
Mm-hmm.
is to make these kids into quote unquote spectacles.
Yeah, I saw that in the trailer.
It's to get people to watch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the games are kind of dying out, people aren't watching, and so the president might not want to keep them going, might give them up because, it's been 10 years. No one's watching. What's the point, right? But Dr. Volumina Gaul is dead set on making sure that these games continue. The goal for his the first movement of the movie is to make Lucy Gray into something that people will want to watch so that he can win the prize and his family can be better off.
Mm-hmm.
From the very get-go, his relationship with Lucy Gray is very self-serving. However, as we move into the second part of it, we see Coriolanus become very attached to Lucy Gray in a romantic sense, and him wanting to keep her alive for that reason. But he still has that underlying thought that if she wins, I win. If I win, then I'm going to become like this great big success, president of Panem. The second movement is labeled The Prize, and it's basically all Hunger Games. It is from Lucy Gray doing like her song for people to get to know her on live television, quote unquote. Yeah, there was this big push to make them more personable this year so that people will want to watch. Whether or not that worked, that's up for debate, but it's fine.
What do you mean by that?
I think that for Lucy Gray, it really did work because
Her having a song and stuff?
yes,
Okay.
her whole character is a performer. She gets her strength from her community, from music, and from knowing that she is on the stage. People are watching. And that's something that we see throughout the film. Yeah. Sorry, I've been talking for a while. Thoughts?
No. What was the question?
So it's either we keep talking about things that happen. I'm gonna assume, and I could be definitely wrong, that she wins.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Okay.
She wins because he cheated for her.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Basically, Dr. Gaul has these snakes, and if they've already smelled you, they're not going to attack you. If it's the first time they've smelled you, they are going to attack you. That's the basis of them. She created these snakes. Well, in the arena, she drops all of these snakes, which is like a few 100 gallons of snakes.
Yeah, it's got to be.
400.
It's like a 10-foot high, 15-foot high tank. You need stairs to get up to the top.
Yeah. Full of these snakes.
Yeah.
And they're very vibrant colored. But Coriolanus had experience with them, and so what he did is he took a handkerchief that had Lucy's scent on it and put it into the snake's tank before it went into the arena, so that the snakes were already familiar with her scent when they get dropped into the arena. the snakes killed the last 3 or 4.
It was closer to 6. Probably.
6? Okay.
Yeah.
The last 6 contenders, and then didn't kill Lucy, and that's how she won.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I'm now thinking, like, no wonder no one watches the games, because you just end off, everybody gets killed by, like, some random snakes. Like, that's not fun.
Yeah, no, actually, that point comes up.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
So
Ha!
there's a moment, like, after the snakes get dropped in. The point was to kill everyone.
Yeah. That was Gaul's purpose.
Essentially, there's this moment where you can see Dr. Gaul is hesitating and wondering why she isn't dead. Because the snakes have killed everyone else, but they're hesitating to kill her. And Lucy Gray is singing a song, which I loved. Awesome. Fantastic. Talk about that in a sec.
All the songs are great.
All of the songs were great. We'll get there in a minute. She is hesitating to declare Lucy Gray the winner because she's hoping that the snakes are going to kill her. And they are all in, like, this, Coriolanus is like, she's the last one. She's won. Let her out. And after a little bit, she's hesitating. Dr. Gaul is hesitating to take Lucy Gray out, to declare her the winner. And so all of the other students in that auditorium start chanting, let her out, kind of putting this peer pressure on Dr. Gaul. And you can see that she's still, like, very confused as to why Lucy Gray isn't being attacked by the snakes. Coriolanus goes up and kind of says quietly to her, who will watch the games if there's no victor? And it was another kind of very poignant kind of turning point, because that's also what kind of forces the Capitol's hand in the very first book of the Hunger Games.
Yeah,
is that,
that sounds a little familiar now that I think about it.
And it was a moment where you could see that this was going to be important to the continuation of the games, is that there has to be a victor. The second movement ends with his cheating being discovered by Dean Highbottom, played by Peter Dinklage. Excellent performance, by the way.
Yeah, fantastic.
And Dean Highbottom has been trying to catch Snow in the act of something from the very get-go. He is trying to make sure that the Snows do not have the chance to get back on their feet again. Because Coriolanus' father was his best friend, and when they were drunk one night, Highbottom came up with the idea of the games. His Snow's father pushed it to Gaul and said, hey, what about this? And put both their names on it. So the games started, and Highbottom is so guilt-ridden that he drowns himself in drugs, and he hates the Snows.
Watching it a second time, and thinking about it again, like, Dean Highbottom is the hero of the story. He's this, like, again, this drug addict who hates the main character, and he's a person you're supposed to dislike, and then you kind of think about it and you're like, oh, he's trying to stop the Hunger Games. Like, he's actually kind of the hero. And it's a really interesting kind of dynamic between watching the main character vulnerable and the quote unquote hero as the mean Dean. And I think it's really interesting.
So Highbottom finds out that he cheated in the games to get Lucy to win, and he sends him into exile as an anonymous peacekeeper. So he gets basically right then and there taken away, enlisted, and he's about to be sent off to District 8, and then he bribes a guard to send him to 12, because he wants to see Lucy Gray if he can't have the capital, right?
That is such an important point. Continue.
Yeah. So he goes out to 12, and on the train there, he runs into Sejanus, who he talked out of the arena in the second movement, and follows Coriolanus out to District 12 as another peacekeeper. And he's trying to just be a medic. He just wants to help people. Now we're in District 12 in the third movement. In the third movement, basically what we see is the reuniting of Snow and Lucy Gray, because Lucy Gray made it back. The capital did not kill her. Apparently Dean Highbottom got her out and back to District 12. So she's been reunited with her covey, and Snow comes along and is on leave from the base and sees her performing in a bar. They basically just kind of try and pick things up where they left off. And she introduces him to the covey, and they take him outside the district to this random cabin that has just been left untouched by the war and the capital's reach. And it's there that we really see them kind of grow closer. It's another one where we see another couple Easter eggs. We see Lucy Gray writing the song The Hanging Tree. We talked about the mutants. One of the mutants that is very prominent in this film is the Jabberjays. They are a mutant created by Dr. Gaul to remember entire conversations word for word and record them and fly back to their home base, and when you turn on a remote, they repeat back everything they heard, right? Backfired on the capital in the war. Now in the third movement, they're trying to round up the Jabberjays because they're no longer useful. As they're kind of doing that, Coriolanus confronts Sejanus about working with rebels, because Sejanus feels very guilty, even being a peacekeeper. He's in the district and had to guard, kind of be like a riot squad, and hold back this crowd while there's this hanging. And I think it was the wife of the man who was hung was taken into taken into custody by the peacekeepers, and he feels so bad about that he's helping the peacekeepers get her out. And he's just trying to supply money for resources, thinking that it's like food and water and stuff, because the downfall of Sejanus is that he's so naive.
He's really freaking naive.
He is so naive. He can't read Snow, and he can't read other people at all. It's very frustrating, and it is like his Achilles heel in the end, because he doesn't see that Coriolanus is turning on him. Corio tries to warn Sejanus to stop helping them, because I can't tell for certain whether it's out of like frustration or still wanting to stay in good graces with his family.
So the reason that he gave, actually...
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Because, so they're rounding up Jabberjays, and he's talking with Sejanus, trying to convince him to stop. And he tells Sejanus that he doesn't want to get in trouble, because anyone who's friends with someone caught fraternizing with, who's a sympathizer, a
rebel
sympathizer, friends of them will be killed. And so he told Sejanus, like, I don't want to be killed. I don't want my family hurt. You have to stop this because this will backfire on me. And so I think that was one of the moments that he flat out told Sejanus that, like, I'm only in it for myself. I don't care if you get hurt. I care that you get caught and I get punished. During that conversation, he records him and Sejanus talking on the Jabberjays. And the way I kind of see it is, if he had convinced Sejanus to stop, he would have deleted the recording.
Yeah.
But since he didn't convince Sejanus to stop, he wanted everyone to know that he was not part of the rebel sympathizer and had no part in it. No correlation with it. So he recorded on the Jabberjays. That gets sent to
Dr.
Gaul, and Sejanus is then hung for that.
Yeah.
There is a part in the book that I don't think is translated quite as well in the movie, in that Coriolanus is super hesitant to do this, and he also is like, well, I'm going to do it, and de Gaulle probably won't even hear it. There's so many of these Jabberjays that it probably won't even matter. So he's trying to rid himself of the guilt of what he's about to do, and I think that isn't quite as well portrayed in the movie, but a really important part. So anyway, you got these Jabberjays. And
self-excusing, self-serving.
Yes.
Yeah, lots of that. And this is where we're really starting to get to that point where the audience is like, oh, yeah, no, there's no hope for him. Yeah. So Sejanus is hung for that recording that Snoke sent in. Yeah. That's when we're like, oh, no, this is going downhill. He goes back and he is sobbing in the bunk with Sejanus's things because he knows that it's his fault. He killed him. And it's later like applauded by Dr. Gaul, like his ruthlessness and how he was willing to even sell his best friend up the river, and how he kind of owes her because she didn't mention the recording to Sejanus's parents, so they still think that he's a good guy and he could still get their money. And it's just blech. Anyways, you can cut out that noise if you want.
Don't do it.
I will.
We get to that part, and like one of the last scenes that we really get with Sejanus is down in the basement of the bar where Lucy Gray is performing. Snow sees Sejanus duck into like this back hallway area, and he follows him as Lucy Gray is like serenading him with this song about how good he is. And we're all like, he does not deserve that, girl. Take it and go. And he follows him down this hallway, finds him with these rebels and the guns that the rebels bought with Sejanus' money. He confronts Sejanus and he's like, seriously, you're buying them guns? And Sejanus is like, I thought it was only food. I didn't know. And we're all just like, Sejanus, you're so dumb. You're so dumb. And down there is like the rebel leader in that district, and Billy Tope, who is the cheating ex-boyfriend of Lucy Gray, who is really to blame for her going to the arena in the first place, and the mayor's daughter, who Billy Tope cheated on Lucy Gray with. The mayor's daughter, and in retaliation, the mayor's daughter had her dad read Lucy Gray's name in the reaping.
To clarify, Billy Tope cheated on Lucy with the mayor's daughter, and the mayor's daughter then decided to put her name in. So it wasn't even like...
It's so petty.
Yeah.
Her
Jesus.
character is petty. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Not gonna lie, the whole like that whole aspect of like this person's now dating this person. It's just like, oh, okay, didn't expect the film to go there, but okay.
Yeah. Neither did I. But you know, it's like one of those things that you would kind of expect from like an Appalachian folk song. Like, yeah, Billy Tope cheated on Lucy Gray with what's her face? I can't even remember.
I don't know, like Mary or something.
Yeah, Mayfair Lip actually is her name. Okay, there we go. We have a cast list in front of us. So Lucy Gray follows after Coriolanus once the song is done because she's like, why did he walk out on me? And finds them down there conspiring, and the mayor's daughter is like, oh, Lucy Gray is involved with you again now, Billy Tope? I'm gonna tell my dad and y'all are gonna hang, and starts to leave. Coriolanus, being the impulsive jerkwad that he is, snags up one of those guns and shoots her in the back as she's leaving. And
right.
Yeah, Billy Tope like rounds on him and is about to like attack. This was a kind of an unexpected turn that I don't know if I really buy into, but you know, it's there now. The rebel leader, Spruce, that was also down there, grabs the other gun and shoots Billy Tope. 2 people are dead down there. They have guns in their hands and fingerprints all over them. Spruce, the rebel leader, Sejanus, and Lucy Gray down there that know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And over the next couple days, we see Lucy Gray is like panicking and wants to get out, tells Snow that she's going to run away because the mayor thinks that it was her that shot his daughter in retaliation, because, you know, that's the sort of thing that happens. And
just a Wednesday.
Just a typical Tuesday in Appalachia. And so she's planning to run away. Snow convinces her to wait for him. Says that he's going to run away with her. Because it's not safe for him either, because he shot someone. Then he just goes completely off the rails. He comes out of there from talking to Lucy Gray, and we see Spruce, the rebel leader, getting dragged out of from wherever, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we got one." He says his name is Spruce, and we're like, "This is some of the most awful improv or writing that I have ever seen." But other than that, it was pretty good. And
Corio feels really bad, cries, whatever, but doesn't really do anything about it. Then him and Lucy run away because he's worried that the mayor's going to kill her because he's going to think that she killed his daughter, if that makes sense. And then Corio is worried that they're going to find his fingerprints on the guns, and so he runs away with Lucy. And so they both run, and they get to this cabin. Because they're like running north and are going to run away from their lives. And they get to the cabin that you saw earlier, and he finds the stash of guns that the peacekeepers have been looking for. And so now he has all of the evidence that he can dispose of and give no connection to of him to the murder of the mayor's daughter. Following?
Mm-hmm.
Now,
so he has a
there's
good
moment,
alibi. Is that what you're saying?
he has a good alibi, and the only evidence tying him to the murder of the daughter is those guns that he now found in the cabin.
And Lucy Gray.
Yes, and so there's a comment where he's like, okay, I can get rid of these, and there's no more connections. And Lucy Gray goes, well, except for me. And he goes, what? And that is the dumbest thing she could have said.
It is. He's like, but you wouldn't tell anyone. And she's like, of course not.
Of course not. As she walks out the door and runs away.
Yeah.
And then he realizes, oh, she's going to tell someone, even though she's just worried about her life. And so there's kind of this moment where it's like, he's worried that he's going to kill her, so he runs. He's worried that he's going to run and tell, so he goes and tries to kill her. And there's just miscommunication or lack of trust.
Yeah.
And so then she runs, and he takes one of the guns and hunts her down and tries to kill her. And he shoots, and you think that she might be down, but you never see her body. And that's a connection to a song, and that's a little bit too long of an explanation.
Okay.
But you don't know at the end if Lucy is dead. You only know that she never shows up again. And he then gets rid of the evidence. He dumps all the guns into a lake, and he goes back to his base. Sure.
Yeah.
And continues to live out his peacekeeper years, except that gets interrupted short when he gets called back to the capital by Dr. Gaul. Dr. Gaul knows that he sold out Sejanus for himself and for the capital, and so she applauds him and says, "Hey, you're what we're looking for the next game maker. I'm going to put you under my wing." And this is where she asks him the question for the final time, what's the point of the Hunger Games? And he replies, how does he reply? What is the point of the Hunger Games?
The point of the Hunger Games is to remind people what we are deep down.
Right, that we're
all just killers in the making.
Yes.
We will kill and fight and do anything we need to survive.
Yes. And that's the end of the movie. Essentially.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are also little bits of revenge sprinkled in through that final sequence.
Oh, of course.
Oh yeah. He kills Dean Highbottom too. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
What?
Wait,
what?
Yes.
How?
He poisons him, actually.
The drugs that Dean Highbottom has been taking throughout the entire movie, he poisons a little vial of it and hands it to him.
Doesn't hand it to him, but leaves it with Sejanus' things.
Yeah.
Knowing that he would look through them, find them, and be like, oh, this is what I'm addicted to. I want drugs. And just down it without thinking about it. And so, there is a big old theme of poison throughout this entire thing.
Well, I mean,
and it is,
sorry,
no, not just the snakes.
Snake the venomous.
Yes, and You had to, didn't you?
I had to.
Poison shows up throughout the film. It starts in like the first movement. He is using rat poison in the apartment to kill off the pests because they're so broke they're getting rats in there. And he is inspired. He packs the poison into a compact mirror that his mother left behind for him, and he gives it to Lucy Gray to use as a weapon in the games to give her a leg up. That's the first moment of cheating, and he might have gotten away with it if not for the aforementioned handkerchief and the snakes. And she uses that a couple times throughout the arena to survive, right? So we see it as like the a way to manage poverty, a way to it was like a bargaining chip that he used. Like he had to display affection for him to give it to her. It was implied. He didn't just say that, but like you could tell that he was kind of on the fence whether he wanted to cheat for her or not. And then her using it as a weapon just for pure survival. And then the snakes killing off everyone, a form of like major punishment. And then we see it again as he's chasing down Lucy Gray. There's a point where he picks up the shawl from where she dropped it, a shawl that he had given her, and a snake was underneath and launches out and bites him. And he is poisoned, and it's this betrayal. And then finally, at the end, it is a form of revenge against Highbottom to be like, this is done. You will have no more power over me. I am removing you from this game. And I think that is a very interesting kind of progression that we see throughout the film. I thought a little bit too much about it. Don't worry about it.
No, I don't think you thought too much about it at all. It's a huge, because it even shows up in the original trilogy too, with the berries and everything.
That's true. So that was a really interesting symbol and plot point there. As a whole, I would say that the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is this very much corruption arc and ties so closely to this slow acting poison of this young mind and partially a shaping of a human and a life that is going to have this just awful impact on the world around him. It's a tragedy, but at the same time, you don't feel bad for the main character at the end.
Yeah, you don't sympathize with him at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I think they do a very good job showing him as vulnerable at the beginning and then as bad guy at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. I gotcha.
This movie was very different in my eyes because of that kind of focus, whereas with the main trilogy, you're like very much cheering for Katniss, watching this all play out, seeing what she's going to choose, whether she's going to go with revenge and the primal instinct that's kind of also symbolized by Gaul, or if she's going to go for the more trying to rebuild and choose peace and unity at the end with like Peeta, right? And yeah, so that is the point of the love triangle in the Hunger Games. I cannot stress this enough. It is a symbol, not a Twilight. Thank you and good day. Sorry, I really want that in there. I can't. People are like, oh, it's a love triangle. It's like Twilight. I'm like, no, actually, it's not like Twilight.
Sorry I didn't prepare you, James.
Throw me into the water without a life vest. It's all good.
Yeah.
No, that's not me.
It's kind of the
My bad.
$1 million media way of like getting on the show. It's just like, you want to talk about this? Sure. I won't tell you anything about how the show works.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
It's worked so far.
I mean, that's how I got into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this movie was very well done in my opinion. For those who are fans of the franchise, it's definitely worth seeing. If you have any interest at all in like villain origin stories, it's definitely worth a watch.
Okay.
Or a read if that's more your style, but this is $1 Million Media. It's about the movies.
We don't read.
I would definitely give it a good old thumbs up. Any last questions, Max?
No, you guys said a lot. I kind of got a pretty good idea of what the movie's about.
Okay. Yeah. It was a lot about what the movie's about. I'm so sorry. There's so much content in it. My
Yeah,
bad.
no, you're good. You're good. This is fun. I do enjoy talking to you too. James,
Uh,
do you have anything else to say before we move or before we wrap this up?
yeah, I talked a lot.
Um,
Did you have a favorite character?
Oh God, we talk.
10 words or less.
what's the last to have a favorite character? Sejanus and Dean Highbottom.
Okay.
Those two were the heroes in my opinion. You could argue Lucy Gray. I think that's a valid argument for that she's a hero, but I think those two are really heroes. I think but I think they both are too flawed to become the hero that they needed to be. And if Sejanus had thought a little bit more, and if he had been a little less naive, he could have actually used his father's money, like Coriolanus suggested,
Hmm.
and made actual differences instead of just getting himself killed
Yeah.
by doing dumb.
Thank you.
I think every character was so well done, um, and I think I could talk for another hour about things I enjoyed about it.
Mm-hmm. For me, my favorite characters were Lucy Gray Baird and Tigris.
Oh, Tigris was so
For aforementioned reasons. And I thought that a lot of the tributes were very well done. Just to name a few, standout performances were done by the person who played Coral and Reaper and Wovey were all fantastic, in my opinion. If you want to know more about those, I really just suggest going out and watching the film. It was fantastic. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you too for doing this review for me. Actually, I know that like I didn't plan to review this initially, but you messaged me saying, "Can we do this?" And I was like, I mean, why not? I mean, we could do it. I just don't know anything about it.
Yeah, like I had so many thoughts. I was really into the franchise in middle school, like
Mhm.
when the movies were coming out. So I really kind of caught the wave with that and was very excited to see this second wave coming because I've seen it blowing up all over. People are reigniting their interest in the Hunger Games, and this book and film in particular
Mhm.
really helped start that off. So thanks for letting me get on here and just rant about how good it is.
No problem. And thank you, James, for coming on the shows. I know this is a bit different.
That's all right. I love the sound of my own voice, so anytime you want me on the show, I'm happy to talk.
Hell yeah! Actually, please like, subscribe, and share for more. Please follow us on Patreon. We're trying to also get that going. And yeah, have a good day. Bye.